Hi, I'm Lori Goller. I'm responsible for HR at Facebook.
Hi, I'm Rashmi Sinha. I'm CEO and co-founder of SlideShare.
Hi, I'm Tim Wenzel, VP of HR from Chegg.
I'm Dave Selinger. I'm the CEO and founder at Rich Relevance.
And I'm James Currier. I'm the CEO and founder of Wonderhill and used to run Tickle.com. The first thing, I started an incubator about 4 years ago called Ooga Labs, and it was called Ooga because I felt Ooga was a word that connoted tribe. And so the idea was to build a culture and then out of that culture give birth to companies. So it wasn't really starting a company, it was actually starting a culture first. And the thing that we looked at, I looked at my co-founder and we said, well, what are our personalities and who are the people we want to work with? And so establishing a little bit of self-knowledge about people that you work well with, I think is sort of the first step. And then those first few hires should reflect people who make you laugh, people who make you productive, people who make you happy, because that is going to end up carrying through to the next hires and the next hires.
So actually knowing who you are helps you to get to the next step of who you want to hire. And Tim, do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I think that early on when you're founding a company, it's sort of the personal beliefs and values of the founders that really set the culture. And then you sort of build a team around you. Like he said, hopefully people you enjoy going to battle with, so to speak. And then you actually get that early team involved in building, okay, what are the values that we want to live sort of as we scale.
And Tim, just on that, what were some of the values that were important to your company?
So they've all been different. I'm at my fourth startup now, but so I sort of grew up at PayPal, and some of the things that we believed in were, healthy debate. We used to sort of look like we were fighting, but we were actually just passionate about the business. And, we'd still go have beers after work, and, it was never personal. So I think just challenging each other on an ongoing basis and keeping that, no matter what size the company is, keeping that sort of continuous improvement vibe going is really critical.
Okay. Do you have to be friends to have a successful company?
I don't think you have to, but it makes things a lot easier. If you have a personal relationship, the day-to-day sort of politics and battles just get a lot easier. Just sort of, it increases trust, and I've certainly seen the performance of the companies I've worked at that had that, result in better performance and execution.
Dave?
I disagree. I mean, I think at the startup phase, you absolutely have to have that personal connection. The degree to which you're, fighting out issues that determine the entire future of your little $5 billion two-person enterprise, you've got to be able to look each other in the eye and say, "F you, you're wrong," and then, like you said, go off and have beers later in the day, and you have to engender that passion. So I disagree a little bit. I mean, there comes a stage where you don't have to have that anymore. Maybe around 50, 75 people.
But do the founders have to be friends?
Oh, absolutely not. As long as the CEO is me, that's just fine.
Anybody else have a belief on the founders have to be? And you don't count because you're right.
Actually, just real quick, I started my company with my two best friends, my best man at my wedding, whom I've known for 30 years, and the guy who married my wife and I've known him for 32 years. So, I mean, I actually really believe in that to an absolute extreme.
That you have to be.
Not quite that good friends, but yeah, I really do, especially in your founding team.
Any contrary opinions at all? Okay.
I would say that it's very hard to start businesses with friends. It's very dangerous, actually.
It is dangerous. So
yeah, I think it's dangerous to start business with friends. I think it's more important to find people you want to start businesses with and then become friends.
Interesting. And how about marrying your co-founder? Anyone have an opinion on that?
Well, we were married before, so it works well for us.
And what are you talking about when you get home?
That's the problem. Even it's very hard for us not to talk about SlideShare. But it does mean that if I have a great idea, if I have a great idea in my dreams or something, I wake up and the first thing I'm like, you know what, we could do this. So by the time we get to the office, we've already had this great communication. So.
Oh man, I'm not going there. I got a lot of stuff to say, but I'm not going to say it.
I would just say that even as we've grown, we've worked really hard to maintain the social connections in the organization. So obviously it started out with a bunch of roommates from Harvard who are obviously friends, and they hired a bunch of their friends. And we kind of are still at the point where we have a lot of people in the organization who are roommates, or who, I look at my newsfeed on a Saturday night and it's all about, I'm at this place with these 6 people, and I look to see who the 6 people are, and they're all employees. So sometimes I've had moments of thinking, do these people have other friends? Are they just hanging out with people that we work with? But we've actually worked really hard as we've kind of hired strangers into the organization to incorporate them in a way that keeps the organization feeling small and connected. Because I think that connection is really important, and it's when you lose that connection, I think, that you start to feel like a big company. So we work really hard at it.
Let me ask the panel, do you guys believe that there is culture shift at scale and size? That is, are there certain numbers that change what you do for culture inside your companies?
There's this number called Dunbar's number, which is the number 150.
Oh, tell us about Dunbar's
Yeah,
number.
well, Steve, it basically is an estimate of the number of people you can have in an organization where everyone can know everyone else. That the 150 is sort of the limit of how many people you can really know without walking down the hall and saying, I've never seen that person before, this is now an alienating place. And so 150, there are companies that actually grow their company in 150-person offices, and then we'll start a new state or a new city once they hit 150 because they believe so much in this. And if you look at sort of the history of a lot of the growths of startups, there seem to be plateaus in numbers of people that you hit. When 4, 15, 35, 65, 120. These are the numbers that we had sort of mapped out when I was working at Battery Ventures back in the 90s. And when I put that chart in front of my team when we were about 12 people, and then 4 years later, someone reminded me of it, and we had done just that. We had grown just in that same pattern. And Steve, you were saying earlier that if you look at throughout history, the structures of military organizations have the same numbers. A platoon is X and a division is Y, whether it's Chinese or whether it's European or whether it's Arabian. Throughout history for the last 2,000 years, these patterns, these mathematical patterns seem to exist. And so I've seen it in investing as a venture guy. I've seen it in building my own company. And history sort of shows us that there are these weird numbers that humans go through. Our brains seem to be wired for certain numbers of people in our monkey tribe or whatever you want to believe. And so I think you need to be aware of that as you grow the company, and that you're going to go through shifts just because of the size of things.
I'm a big believer that the fish stinks or the flower smells good from the head down. Meaning that even if there's a group of co-founders, understanding that at the end of the day, the person that carries the culture is the CEO, and agreeing that the CEO needs to own that through and through. And we talked a little about time allocation with the last speaker, and that needs to be part of the job description of the CEO and how you internalize that. And the second half of that, and we've talked about Zappos a little bit today. I think Zappos is a phenomenal example of something that went drastically wrong. And that's that Tony did not get buy-in from his board that culture was going to be important. And that's something that you start on day one. You build your board from day one, and a lot of us are raising capital, and you've got to make sure that if you want culture to be X and you want it to be this important, that alignment has to go from you as the CEO and you as the founding team all the way up into the board, because otherwise you end up having the collision that when the rubber meets the road, Tony admitted he sold his company way before he wanted to, and that was absolutely the wedge that drove them apart.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you. Nice to